Senator, are you supportive of the Texas Supreme Court's ruling in the Kate Cox case that prevented her from getting an abortion after she learned her fetus was not viable?
Just call her press office.
I actually have for 2 days now, and I still haven't received an answer.
Thank you.
Yeah, talk about a profile in courage. It goes, American soldiers who stormed the beaches at Normandy here, and Ted Cruz avoiding a reporter asking a basic question here. Not often we get the privilege of watching such bravery on display. And of course, the reason that he's avoiding this question is because Republicans like Ted Cruz aren't willing to defend the positions they support, because they're well aware of how unpopular they are. Imagine holding a position so reprehensible that you're not even willing to acknowledge it out loud. That's apparently what it's like to be a senator in today's Republican Party. And that position, mind you, is one that's currently in place in Texas, where virtually no women have the right to an abortion. In this instance, 31-year-old Kate Cox, whose 20-week-old fetus had trisomy 18, which is a fatal genetic condition that would likely mean her child wouldn't live more than a few days outside of the womb if it even made it that far, was seeking an exemption in court from the state's abortion ban. But Texas's far-right Attorney General, Ken Paxton, intervened on behalf of the state and appealed the ruling from a lower court to the Texas Supreme Court, which reversed that lower court's ruling and refused to grant Cox the abortion exemption that she was seeking, even though continuing to carry her pregnancy put her own health at risk and her future fertility at risk. But hey, pro-life or something. Cox ultimately had to leave the state to seek reproductive care elsewhere, but keep in mind that for every one Kate Cox who is able to leave, there are thousands of other women who don't have the ability to flee their states. And so as a result, politicians, most of whom are old white men, are the ones dictating how women are to live their lives. All of this straight from the Party of Freedom. So while Ted Cruz would love nothing more than to sweep this under the rug, it is beyond important that we show the people impacted by this draconian position that he supports, even if he's too cowardly to actually acknowledge it in public. Here's Kate Cox showing what the practical impacts of these policies are.
Kate, you didn't have to give an interview today. You don't have to give any interviews, but you did want to speak today. Why?
I wanted the opportunity to tell my story. I know personally before going into this, I never imagined we'd be in this position. I never imagined I would ever want or need an abortion. And I think by sharing this story, you can imagine, the women that you love in your life and, imagine they're pregnant and so happy and looking forward to the baby. And they find out that she will not survive. She'll either die in my belly or I'll carry her to term and have to deliver her stillborn. Or if she arrives into this world, her life will be measured in minutes or hours or days and plagued with medical devices. She would need to be placed directly onto hospice. So imagine receiving that news and pairing that with the risks and complications of continuing the pregnancy and the childbirth. It's overwhelming. So I wanted to share my story because I never would have thought of it before it happened to me. And so I just, want people to hear it.
Yeah, and for those wondering, that's bravery. Coming on national television and sharing a deeply personal story of loss and grief and heartache. Ted Cruz, by contrast, is a fucking coward who's more concerned with his podcast than the people that his policies actually impact. And if you needed more evidence of exactly who Ted Cruz is, note what he's spending his time on. The Daily Caller published an article about how Alabama Senator Kate Britt has introduced legislation to prevent illegal immigrants from voting in federal elections. Ted Cruz then tweeted, "Illegal aliens should not be able to vote in federal elections, period. This should not be controversial." And he's right, it shouldn't be, and in fact, it's not. And that's because it is already illegal for undocumented immigrants to vote in federal elections. In other words, introducing a new law that bans them from voting in federal elections is like introducing a law that makes committing felonies illegal. And of course, when called out on the fact that he's arguing a complete straw man, Ted doubled down, offering up some quote-unquote receipts, like this one showing that the New York City Council extended voting rights for non-citizens and that DC did the same. Only small problem, those are local elections, and Ted Cruz was explicitly arguing against undocumented immigrants voting in federal elections, meaning that his receipts didn't actually prove anything other than perhaps that he doesn't know the difference between local and federal elections. But more importantly, notice that Ted Cruz will spend his time publicly whipping up hysteria over something that quite literally does not exist, and yet when he's challenged on a policy that not only exists, but is sending Texas women fleeing his state to seek basic reproductive health care, suddenly he can't find his tongue. Ted Cruz can't find a camera that he won't blather into until he's blue in the face, but when posed with issues that actually impact real people, well, then you gotta reach out to his office. So my advice for members of the media who do have the misfortune of coming across Ted Cruz is to not allow him to shirk off this question. I get that he wants to talk about migrant caravans and non-existent ballot dumps all day because that'll help him get booked on Fox, but those things are not real and they don't actually impact anyone. It's his position on women's reproductive rights that actually impacts people and that he's trying to hide. But sunlight is the best disinfectant, so the more he runs, the harder we should chase him. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to the channel and do your part to help grow the progressive media ecosystem. I don't do sponsorships or paid ads, I won't ask for money, but just subscribing to this channel goes a really long way and it helps get the message out to more people. The subscribe button is right here on the screen. You can also subscribe to my Spanish language channel, which I made to reach those crucial Spanish-speaking voters. That link is on the screen too. And finally, if you want to listen to my audio podcast, you can follow that link as well. Thanks so much for watching.